Welcome to the Diving Deeper training module for the fish station. This video is intended to introduce you to teaching the fish station on our Diving Deeper sales. If you have not yet taught another version of the fish station before, or you have not yet watched the other fish station training videos, we recommend you start there. The backgrounds and objectives, what's in the bin, and how to teach videos provide a ton of helpful information and tips to be a successful fish instructor on any of our programs. The Diving Deeper program is designed to give high school age students an authentic, hands-on Great Lakes research experience. Much of the program is student-led, and as an instructor on our Diving Deeper program, your role is mainly just to facilitate the research process. Each station investigates a different topic that overall will help us to evaluate the health of Sutton's Bay. At the fish station, the students will be researching the question, compared to native fish species, how common are round gobies in the shallow waters of Lake Michigan, and are the forage fish populations in Sutton's Bay healthy? Students will work to test their hypotheses on this topic by collecting a fish sample, identifying, sexing, and measuring their catch, and creating graphs to analyze their findings and compare their results to historic data. During the Diving Deeper program, students will keep track of all of the data they collect in a student worksheet packet. Later on, students will use these packets to create graphs, analyze the results, and decide on how to answer their research questions. These worksheets are separate from the internal data sheet that you as a fish instructor are responsible for completing. We will dig deeper into the contents of the student worksheet throughout this training video. Diving Deeper programs are structured a bit differently than our other programs. Now that you have a general idea of the goals of the program, let's walk through a Diving Deeper sail through the eyes of a fish instructor. Before coming aboard, students will be broken up into groups and paired with their instructor. They will then have about 5 minutes to talk with each other and the instructor to discuss their research goals and how their station's topic can help them evaluate the health of the Great Lakes. During these introductions, encourage your group to start thinking about what they already know about Great Lakes fish and what they might want to find out. Students will have a better understanding of and feel more ownership of the project if they are guided through the development of their research question with conversation rather than just told what they are going to do. One of the best ways you can help lead your group through forming their research question is by taking some time to introduce and answer questions about the otter trawl, the boat, and other available tools. Understanding the capabilities and limitations of these tools will help students gauge their expectations and form more relevant research ideas. Another way you can help guide your students through developing their research question is by asking leading questions to help them think about their topic. Some examples of such leading questions could include, what do you already know about the health of Great Lakes fisheries? What is a forage fish? Where do forage fish fit in the Great Lakes food web? What would a healthy forage fish population look like? What would an unhealthy one look like? What do you already know about invasive species? How could an invasive species impact the health of an ecosystem? These questions are also a great tool to help you gauge your group's prior knowledge on the subject. By the end of these conversations, students will be asked to present their research plan to the captain. Have your group elect a spokesperson to present. Although they may pretend to be out of the loop, the captains already know the program plan and exactly how they need to maneuver the boat for the sampling to be successful, so don't fret. This is all for the fun of giving students an authentic research experience. Your goal is for your students to be able to tell the captain what their research question is, what sampling method they would like to use, and what they need the captain to do with the boat while they sample. One example of this presentation could be, we want to sample the forage fish population in Sutton's Bay to compare the abundance of invasive versus native fish species. We would like to do a 10-minute otter trawl in 20 to 30 feet of water. We will require the boat to be moving during our sampling. After the captain has heard all the research plans, established the overall plan for the boat, and the safety speech has been delivered, it's time to get off the dock and get rolling. Lucky you, the fish group collects their sample first, right after we leave the dock. If they have not done so already, have your group elect a data recorder as soon as they are on board. This student will be responsible for maintaining and recording data on the worksheet during sampling time. While the mate is leading the rest of your group through setting up and launching the otter trawl, you can orient the student data recorder with the places on the ship they will need to pull data from. The worksheet requires the students to record the following information at the beginning and end of the trawl. The starting and ending time, which will be taken from a watch or a phone, the starting and ending depth, which will be taken from the depth gauge in the pilot house window, and the starting and ending latitude and longitude, which can be taken from the Garmin by the captain or the ship's radio in the pilot house. While the trawl is in the water, continue to engage your students in a discussion about their research. Trawl time is a great time to discuss with the students more in depth how the otter trawl works or why we trawl for 10 minutes every sail. Unlike our next-gen programs, during Diving Deeper programs, the lead instructor doesn't do a full boat discussion about the otter trawl. It is up to the fish instructor to make sure that their students understand the basic function of the trawl so they can later explain their sampling method to their peers during presentation time. Draw time is also a great time to invite students to make predictions about their sample and form a hypothesis about their research project. A hypothesis is an informed prediction about the answer to their research question. You can help your students make these predictions by asking them questions such as, what kind of species could we catch? How many different species of fish could we catch? How many fish will we catch in all? How big will the fish be? Will there be a diversity of species, or will there be more of one than others? At the end of the trawl, the data recorder will repeat the process and collect the ending data. The rest of the group will help the mate haul the trawl in. After the trawl is back on board, the captain will start to motor to the shallow mount. During this time, your group will most likely be occupied with moving fish from the trawl net to the aquarium. Once the fish are secure, invite your group to make observations about their catch. You can ask them questions such as, what do you notice? Were your initial predictions correct? Is there a diversity of species? Is one species more prominent than others? And what part of the tank are the fish hanging out in? After the students are given a chance to observe their catch, cover the tank with a towel to give the fishies some rest. If time allows, a map of Sutton's Bay is provided on page 3 of the student worksheet for students to use the latitude and longitude they've recorded during sampling to map the route of their fish trawl. Page 3 also has space to record the general observations they just made about their catch. This page is optional but can help students talk about their research process later during presentations. By now, the captain will likely have us near the deep spot. At the deep spot, most other groups are collecting or preparing to collect their primary sample. Since the fish group has already done so, we will instead start to collect weather data. Once the conversation surrounding the fish catch has died down, transition to introducing students to the weather sampling tools. Pages 1 and 2 of the student worksheet list all the weather variables students should collect. At their station, the students will measure water clarity with a Secchi disc, measure wind speed with an anemometer, and measure air temperature and surface water temperature with a thermometer. Students will also use visual analysis to calculate wave height, wave period, cloud coverage, current visibility, and current precipitation. Encourage your students to take their best estimate with these. We don't need to be exact, but everyone should agree. Once your students have collected all of the weather data at their station, it's time for a field trip to the pilot house. Not only can this be a nice change of scenery, but in here, students can record the barometric pressure from the barometer and the latitude and longitude from the ship's radio. This is also a good time to show students the ship's navigation equipment. Students will likely be curious about the things they are seeing, and it can be fun to show off any knowledge you have about the ship. Encourage your students to ask questions, and if you don't know an answer, the captain is usually nearby to assist. Phew, that was a lot of data collection. Let's take a break and rate some sails. During sail time, your only job is to ensure students don't fall overboard. The lead instructor will direct your students to when it is their turn to haul up sails. After sails are set and the 2 minutes of silence have elapsed, it is time to begin the analysis portion of the program. First things first, your students will need to dig in and process the fish that they caught. Every fish will need to be identified, measured, and if it is a round goby, determine if it is male or female. There's a table on pages 4 through 7 of the student worksheet for students to record all of this information. The most successful student groups organize an assembly line of sorts to process their fish, where 1 to 3 students are identifying, measuring, and sexing the fish, and 1 student is recording the data. Once you help the students start on this process, they usually become pretty self-sufficient. As long as students are being responsible with their fish and staying on task, all you need to do is observe and be available for questions. A quick note on fish care. Diving Deeper students will handle every fish in the tank. Please be sure they are aware of proper fish handling techniques. Make sure their hands are wet before holding a fish. Make sure they are taking care not to squeeze, drop, or step on a fish. Make sure they are treating the fish overall with respect. These are living creatures, and horseplay or abuse should not be tolerated. If there are a large amount of fish, try to return all but a select few to the lake after processing to reduce the amount of stress that they endure. When returning fish to the lake, it is also important not to fling, throw, or chuck them back into the water. Instead, gently dump fish overboard in one of the small aquariums. Now, let's dig a little deeper into the sample processing procedure. To identify the fish, students will primarily utilize the dichotomous key. To start, take some time to introduce students to fish anatomy and especially bring their attention to the parts of the fish that might help them work their way through the key. For example, a defining characteristic of the round goby is a fused pelvic fin, so pointing out the location of this fin is a great hint to start them off. You can help them answer questions in the key if need be, but some students will be quick to try and employ a guess and check method based solely on the pictures, and this should be discouraged. To measure the fish, we have 2 measuring boards that are specifically designed to measure fish. Encourage students to measure in centimeters and make sure the nose of the fish touches the edge of the board. For round gobies only, we can determine the sex of each fish. Have the students flip the goby over so they can see their stomach. Below their pelvic fin, males will have an elongated bump called a papilla. Females will have a shorter, rounder papilla. Refer to the image on the slide for more clarity on this. There is also a laminate in the fish bin with this image to guide students through the process. For other fish species and gobies that are too small to determine, it is perfectly acceptable to record as an unknown or not applicable. The table in the worksheet also has a spot to record ectoparasite presence. Currently, we do not know what these parasites are or how they impact the fish. It is optional to keep track of parasite presence, but if your students choose to do so, have them look for small white dots like what is shown here on the fish's body. Have them record parasite load as presence or absence only. Once all fish are processed and the table is filled out, students should then move on to data analysis. In the student worksheet, there are pages for the students to make graphs of all of their results. Page 8 of the student worksheet gives them the space to work through the process of creating a pie graph that depicts the species composition of their catch. This graph is the most important piece of data analysis for them to complete, as it answers the main research question of, compared to native species, how common are round gobies in Suttons Bay? Once your students have completed making their pie graph, if you have not done so already, take some time to tell the story of the round goby, where they're from, how they got here, and why they're a successful invasive species in the Great Lakes. Then, introduce the historical pie graphs to show the impact of the round goby on Great Lakes forage fish populations. Have your students compare their own pie graph to the historical fish catch pie graphs we keep on board. Ask your students, how does the data we collect today fit into the historical data set? What does the historical data set tell us about the impact of round gobies on Suttons Bay? Does our own data support that story? How can we use this graph to answer our research question? Again, if you are in a time crunch at all, this pie graph is the one to focus on completing. The other graphs are great to have, but they can just as easily be made at a later date. On page 6 of the student worksheet, there is a space to create a histogram that depicts fish length. Once this graph is complete, discuss with students. What does the length of a fish tell you about it? Would you expect a healthy population of fish to be all the same length, or would they be a range of length? Hint: mainly, the length of a fish tells you its age. A healthy fish population will be a range of sizes, suggesting success in all life stages. On page 7 of the student worksheet, there is a space to create a bar graph of male versus female round gobies. Once this graph is complete, discuss with your students. What could the sex ratio in a population tell you about it? Hint: for round gobies, a stable established population usually has a 1-to-1 male-to-female ratio. However, populations of round gobies in areas where they have recently been introduced tend to have a more male-dominant population, having as many as 6 males for every 1 female. This is likely because male gobies are known to be more aggressive and territorial, which gives them a greater drive to expand into new areas. As these populations become more established, the sex ratio trends more towards 1-to-1. Making this graph can help your students answer the question, does the sex ratio of round gobies we sampled today suggest a population that has become established in Suttons Bay? Finally, on page 8 of the student worksheet, there is a space to create a bar graph of parasite presence versus absence. If students choose to collect this data, creating this graph can help them determine how much of an impact the ectoparasite has had on the forage fish population. More fish with parasites equals a heavier impact on the population. In the last 10 to 15 minutes of analysis time, start transitioning to preparing your students for presentations. Take some time to review. What was their research question? What was their hypothesis? What sampling and analysis equipment did they use? How did it work? What were the results? Were the results what they expected? And how does their data compare to historical data for Suttons Bay? A lot of students may be nervous about presentations, but these questions can remind them that they know much more than they think. For presentation time, students will be broken up into new groups with one representative from each research topic. These new groups will rotate around the ship and hear from each other about their research. When a group is at the fish station, the representative from your group will be the one presenting. You will remain at the fish station and be there to support your students from the fish group as they present their findings. When the students have rotated through all the stations and heard all the presentations, they will rejoin their original group for docking at the end of the program. This is a great time for some stewardship conversation and an overall review of the program. Ask your students things like, I've been at the fish station the whole time. What else did you guys find on the ship? What did your findings and the findings of your peers suggest about the health of Suttons Bay? What can you do with what you learned today to help care for the Great Lakes? Often, students will have questions about other stations while they are working with you during the program. This is a great time to check in to see if they got those questions answered during the presentations. Before students disembark, be sure to fill out the small instructor data sheet that we use for our internal inland seas dataset. The nice thing about diving deeper programs is that the students have already done all the work for you. The start and end times, depth and location of the trawl, the total fish catch, and the species breakdown can easily be transferred from the student worksheet to your own data sheet. Students will take their worksheet with them off the boat, so this is your last chance to gather this data. And just like that, we're back on the dock. Thank the students for being excellent Great Lakes researchers and bid them farewell. To clean up, release all the remaining fish, dry the equipment, and turn in your instructor data sheet to the lead. That's it! You've successfully done a Diving Deeper sail as a fish instructor. Have a nice day! If you have further questions about this training, diving deeper sales, or volunteering for inland seas in general, feel free to reach out. Our volunteer coordinator or education coordinator will be happy to help out and answer all your questions. Thank you so much.